Hello, everybody, and welcome to another evening of Northshire Presents. For those of you who don't know me, Rachel Person. I'm the event manager for Northshire Bookstore in Saratoga Springs, New York, here with my friend and colleague, David Wood, event manager for Northshire Bookstore in Manchester Center, Vermont. Before David introduced our special guest this evening, a couple of very quick notes. First of all, you may have noticed as you were coming in that this evening's presentation is being recorded for future broadcasts on our YouTube channel. However, fear not, we have the settings such that only those of us who are unmuted and speaking will appear in that recording. So you can keep your camera on and you will not be recorded for posterity, so don't worry about that. And then in light of that, please use the chat throughout the evening to post any questions that you have. We will ask those for you on a rolling basis. And then last but not least, you may have been hearing that the supply chain is really messed up again this year. So our public service announcement is whatever local businesses you are supporting this year, hopefully your friendly neighborhood bookstore, but also any other local businesses, please shop early for the holidays if you possibly can. It will help everyone out. We're already seeing all sorts of shenanigans with books getting to us. So anything you can do for that will be great. And then without further ado, David, please introduce our guest tonight.
Thank you so much, Rachel. It is my pleasure to once again introduce and welcome back to Northshire, John Gray, an Emmy Award-winning television journalist on WNET and a columnist in upstate New York. He's a great friend of the Northshire bookstores and other indie stores. He's the author of the popular children's books God Needed a Puppy, In Keller's Heart, and Sweet Polly Petals. His debut novel, Manchester Christmas, was a bestseller in both our stores last year, and he joins us today to celebrate the publication of his follow-up to Manchester Christmas, Chasing Manhattan. We are also lucky to be joined by Shayna Brickell, the illustrator of John's books. Please join me in welcoming back to Northshire, Shayna and John. John, why don't you get started and tell us a little bit about Chasing Manhattan?
Well, thank you, first of all, everybody who joined into this thing tonight. I know we were going to be doing it in person, but as all our lives got tipped upside down by COVID, we kind of go along with how we can do it. So we're all together anyway over the computer or over the phone. So we're excited about that. With the first book, Manchester Christmas, you know, it came to me, the idea for the story in a dream of all things. And the book kind of just flowed from there. And in my mind, I liked the story, and I knew I liked the story because when I got to the end of Manchester Christmas, I didn't want to say goodbye to the characters. I really wanted to stay with them in Manchester. And because it did well with sales, the publisher Paraclete was like, hey, we want to do another book. Do you think there's more with this character? And I said, absolutely. But to sit down and just write another book where Chase and Gavin are in Manchester, it would, to me, would feel, it'd be great because it'd be familiar, but it would also feel like we're not going in new territory. So I tried to think about what would happen with this character who is, if you read the first book, is a writer. What would happen if her first book really blew up and did amazing things? And it was all based on the fact that she was seeing these images in church windows. To me, what would happen is people would just start showing up in Manchester and looking for her. You know, my son's been lost for 27 years. Can you look in the window and tell me where he is, or tell me if he's in heaven, or tell me where my lost dog is, or, you know. So the premise for the second book is that we pick it up where Chase had to leave Manchester and go somewhere else to not start over, but to just sort of be away from that crazy scene in Manchester that happened after her book was a success. And that's where the story begins and starts. And I want to bring Shayna in here because Shayna did all my illustrations on the first three children's books. But when we did Manchester Christmas, I really wanted her to be part of it. And she did an amazing cover on that book. I think her cover alone is attributed to some of the sales doing so well because it's such a pretty book to pick up. And the same was true with Chasing Manhattan. Shayna, for those who, I'll ask you a question. Is when you do artwork like that, is it the first try you get it, or is it like a process where you do multiple, you have to start over sometimes to get what you want?
A lot, yeah. Especially a more difficult, trying to capture the adult novel books are harder because it's just one image. So it's got to be exactly right. So right. I probably did 15, 16 iterations for Chasing Manhattan before I felt like sketching it out that I was getting close to what would capture, you know, the story of what you were trying to, the magic, right? Right. With the children's books, you have a lot of image to capture interest, but with the grown-up books, it's that one image that, has to kind of resonate with the buyer, and
Right.
with your story, so it's hard. And I really appreciate John's faith in my abilities to connect with his message. I mean, it's really, I take it serious to try to capture, the intent of his story and the message.
Well, it's interesting. When we first were thinking about the first adult book, the first novel, you had done such a great job with the kids' books, but it's like, well, can this person do this kind of thing too? And we didn't know the answer till you did it. And then once you did the first book, we're like, well, let's try for the second book. And it worked out great. Well, people who are watching on the Zoom now, what's interesting, and I never thought of this, and I would never think of it because I'm not an artist, and Shayna has to think of this, and sometimes it can be maddening, is you could do this amazing painting of like, this, here's the cover of your book. And then a publisher says, well, this skyscraper is going to be in the way because we have to put the title there. You say, well, that skyscraper is there. You say, well, it needs to not be there. So you have to shape the book a little bit to the title. And also even, which I had no idea, lower right is, I guess, where, you folks from Northshire can tell me, lower right is where they put a sticker of it signed by the author. And one of the kids' books had something lower right that was there, and it became a problem because if you sign a book and you want to put a sticker on there, you go, well, now you're putting a sticker over this kitten's head. And you go, I didn't think of that. So these are all things you have to think about when you do that. But yeah, thank you again for doing the illustrations, and it just came out so well. I love the cover of the book, and Paraclete, I have to give them credit. They don't skimp on spending money to make these books beautiful, which I really appreciate, because you can certainly save money and make more money selling them if you found the cheapest person to do it. But the paper to the binding to all of it's really, really nice, which is great.
Yeah, the color of the book is really beautiful. If you take the jacket cover off, even, it's just really,
right.
Yeah, it's just all the little touches, the nuances.
Yeah, and they're great at doing that stuff. Did you have any questions for me? I know you read the book, because when we were going over the cover, we drove Shayna crazy going, well, we want more of this, we want more of that, we want more of this. It's too dark, it's too light. And Shayna always says the same thing. You know what? Let me just read the story, and then I'll nail the cover, which you did.
It does.
Did you have any?
Did
you have any questions for me over the book at all, or?
Well, there's a special house in the book. I don't want to give away any of the story for those that haven't read it, but it's based on a house that a real house, John, that you've been to or visited, or was it just something you created? Because it's really a really cool part of the book.
It's it sort of is based on a house. There's I can't think of the name of it now. South of Albany, there's a place along the river, not far from Westchester County, where that part of the story is set. And gosh, I forget the name of the place. It's a historic place. It's a historic building where a really ritzy family lived back in like the 1700s. And now it's a museum. You can walk through and see it. And it just was so beautiful. I was only there once in my life, but it's stuck in my head walking through. And just, I feel like old houses just lend themselves to having secrets. Not necessarily bad secrets, but just interesting things about them. And that's what made me want to, have them in there, where there'd be all these secrets surrounding the house. And that to me is a big part of writing these stories. I have to sit down and write the third book this fall and over winter. And I'm not even close to there yet of where I want the story to go, but that's the fun part of figuring out what story can I tell, and what interesting things can I reveal to the reader that they'll say, oh, okay, you're tying this together with that. That was interesting. I didn't see that coming. So that's always fun to do. But yeah.
Now, how did you come up with the game in the book, the particular game?
It just came to me. And again, if people haven't read it, Rachel, have the people on this Zoom read the book, or not necessarily? They haven't gotten it yet, right?
Some have and some haven't. So some people bought a book with their ticket, which they just got today, or if they bought a ticket after we did those orders, they'll be getting, actually no, because we set them aside to be signed. So anyone who bought a book with a ticket for today's event will be getting it after you sign them on Monday.
Gotcha.
But some people joined who already had a copy of the book. So it's some of both.
Then without giving it away to those who haven't read it, what Shayna's referencing is, in the first book, I'm assuming they read the first book, messages come to Chase through these windows, even though nothing like that's ever happened in her life before. She's now in a new place, and she sort of tries to see if she can get messages the way she used to, and they're not there. It's like a faucet being shut off. So she assumes, well, whatever that was is done with me. I did some good in Manchester. I moved on with my life, and it's done. And then all of a sudden, thanks to Scooter, of course, the dog, who's based on Eli, by the way, my little troublemaker over there. That's Eli causing trouble. That's who Scooter is based on. Scooter ends up kind of directing her to something, and some information starts to come to her again about people that she can help around her. And to me, that's the most fun of this character. I like the fact that Chase is not she's not somebody who's kneeling in church every day saying, send me a message, you know. She's somebody who's just a regular person who has a good heart, and whoever you want to believe is sort of using her to help other people. They are, and she gets information and she can use it, which is kind of fun.
Another cool thing in the book about the rescue dogs, there's an element, and I know that's really a passion of you and Courtney, you know, so I love that I noticed a lot of things in the book that refer to you and Courtney in particular, and your pack. So
yes. You definitely have to
how'd you come up with a name for the cafe?
It just thought it'd be an interesting name for a cafe, and this isn't giving anything big away to the reader who hasn't read it yet. Chase is living in this beautiful brownstone in Manhattan, and I picked a corner that was across the street from Sotheby's auction house. So this corner really exists, but what I described there doesn't exist, but it's a beautiful brownstone, and the bottom floor is this cafe called the Forever Java, which is F-U-R-R, forever, like fur. And the owner, and it came to me one day, I thought, wouldn't it be cool if somebody owned a coffee shop and they worked with a local shelter and said, give me 1 or 2 dogs a month that are housebroken. I'll let them kind of live down here. There'll be an area where they can go out back and stuff, but they'll just kind of mingle around the cafe for a month and let the regular customers go, what's this one's name again? And pet them. And the next thing you know, you go, wait, this dog's up for adoption. And that's how the dogs get adopted out. So it's not really the biggest part of this book, but it's a little thing in there that Shayna picked up on that definitely ties into us with our 5 dogs here, 3 of which are direct rescues from that. So yeah, just, you know, if I could tell another writer where the ideas come from, I would tell them, but you just sort of, you know, it's like making the soup with your grandmother, you know, you say, you're not writing this down. How do you know how much of carrots to put in or how much that? And they go, it's just experience, and it's just what feels right. And, you know, that's kind of the way writing is too.
Now, in the past, you've had special names for characters in your books based on messages you've gotten. Are there any special names in this one besides?
Oh, there's a few. One of my directors at the TV station is named Nick Hargraves, and he's such a nice guy. And when Manchester came out, he was interested in it, and I said, you know what? I'm going to name a character after you in the next book. He said, oh, really? And then I had to break the news to him. And again, I'm not giving anything away in the story, but when I was writing it, I was probably 7 chapters in. I go, your character just showed up in the book. He says, oh, that's cool. What do I do? I go, well, you're kind of an old man. You're missing a tooth. You know, you're like a handyman maintenance guy. And he laughed and said, oh, that's great. So yeah, so his name is in there, and there's a couple other ones that people will pick up on from the area. Anybody from the capital region, there's a reference to the Albany River Rats, which is a hockey team that used to play here. I love putting little, I guess they call them Christmas ornaments or whatever, in movies and things where you put something in that somebody more local might pick up on, you know, and smile and say, I know what he's talking about. So that's kind of fun.
Little
Easter eggs. That's what you call them. Christmas ornaments. Yeah, Easter eggs. That's what they are. Yeah.
Yeah, and tiebacks to some of your, like a little bit tying to some of your children's books too, with some of the characters and some of the things that they have going on. So
yes,
kind of neat how you're tying that all together. So.
Right. I love with our children's books. Shayna will put things hidden in the books, and some of my dogs are hidden in there. And I love telling people with was it Keller or Polly where you had Edgar the Owl hiding in a tree, you know? And I said, make sure you look for Edgar the Owl in the first book.
Keller.
I said he's hiding. I go, he's hiding in one of the pages, and they love finding him, you know.
And then Max was hidden in God Needed a Puppy.
Yep. Yeah, so it's fun to do those things. You can't do too much of it, or it becomes you lose track of the story. But it's fun to put them in there a little bit. And some things are directly out of my own life. Like there's a reference to serendipity. Anybody who's been to New York City or seen the movie Serendipity with John Cusack, there's a reference to that in the book. And Courtney and I have sat in the very booth that Chase ends up being at in New York City. Where they shot the movie. Kate Beckinsale, I think her name is, and John Cusack shot a movie. If you guys don't know the movie, you're probably like, I don't know what he's talking about, but it's a real restaurant in New York City. It's known for its frozen hot chocolate. And you can sit in the booth where they sit, and they have the picture of the booth with them sitting there right next to the booth. So there's a reference to that. So there's some things like that in the book that people who know New York City are definitely going to pick up on and smile and say, I like that.
And the reference to Somewhere in Time, that movie.
Yeah,
I love that.
That was one of my that was one of my favorite movies. It's a horrendous ending if you've ever seen the
Yes.
movie with Christopher Reeve. You just grab your heart and go no, but yeah, there's a few of those things in there. I mean, that's kind of the way writing is. You go to the attic of your brain and go, okay, what do you got for me today? And he goes, well, how about this? And you go, can you use this? And you go, I don't know, maybe. You ever watch a handyman? You go in there. My father-in-law's got like a garage. And it's got every tool, everything. You'll pick up something and go, what is this? And go, well, that belonged to that, but it broke, so I saved it. Someday I'll need a piece of wood that big with a hook on it, and I'll have this piece of wood. That's the way writing is. You kind of go in your brain and you pick up the loose ends that you've been collecting and putting around, and you hopefully use them. Do we have any questions from anybody watching the Zoom right now?
Not yet, but I actually have one. And audience,
Sure.
Please type any questions that you have in the chat. John, you've had a whole really remarkable career as a journalist. And now you're continuing that, but you've also turned yourself to writing these amazing books, both picture books and novels. And it seems to me that all three of those things, they're all writing, they all involve writing,
Yes.
but it's very different kinds of writing. And I wondered
Yes.
if there are ways in which you sort of set yourself up when you're writing different things that are different.
Yes. TV writing and newspaper writing is quick writing. I think Richard Gere in Runaway Bride called, he was a journalist. He goes, it's journalism is literature in a hurry. I've always liked that line. It's kind of true. The writing of the books is a lot more work, and it's a lot more walking for me. Like, it's almost like I take the stuff I want to write and I don't know how they go together, like putting a puzzle together. And then I just try not to think too hard about it and go for a walk or do whatever. Eventually something will come to you and go, I could use that with this. That would be interesting if I did that. And that to me is the fun of it. But they are definitely different, and you have to be structured about it. I read the book by Stephen King called On Writing, where he talks about the process. It's a very good book. Anybody out there who likes to write, please read that book. But he talks about, you can do a lot of tricks and different things, but ultimately you have to sit at the computer and just do it. And I remember when I took a tour of Norman Rockwell's museum over in Stockbridge, Massachusetts, they said that he was very militant about getting in front of the canvas, even if he didn't have an idea, just the process of getting his paints out and getting his tea or whatever he was drinking and waiting and, for those ideas to come. You can't just say, when I get a great idea, I'll sit and do it. You sometimes have to sit and just start typing a little bit, and hopefully something shows up. It's a fun process, but it can be maddening too if you're trying to come up with something and you're just like, I just don't have it yet.
So we just got a question from Gina asking, how long is the research process for your novels?
It depends on the book. The first one, I've been going to Manchester my whole life, so I've done for 30 years of research that was just sitting there waiting for me to notice it and use it. Chasing Manhattan, I go to New York a number of times a year, so a lot of that was easy. The third book's harder because it's going to be set in Rome, Chasing Rome. I'm putting her name in the titles of these books now, and I've never been to Italy. The plan was I was going to go, but two things happened. One was the pandemic, and the second is the publisher apparently wanted the book for next fall, so there just was no time to try to sneak a trip into Italy. But I put out a lot of feelers to people. I've spoken to several people online who live there, and a lot of things saying like, what wouldn't I know unless I lived there? I didn't really want to talk to people who visited there for a week, like on a honeymoon or just a vacation. you can get some information on that, but I really wanted to talk to people who live there, who were American especially, who went there and said, boy, I thought I knew Italy, but here's the differences and here's little things, and I'm doing that right now. So it's going to be about 2 months of research before I really start writing Chasing Rome, because I wanted to make sure I've got a good idea of the setting for the story before I stick Chase in the middle of it, if that makes sense.
That definitely does. I just got sent an anonymous question asking, did you know when you started writing Manchester Christmas that this was going to be a series?
No. When I started writing Manchester Christmas, I didn't know if I could even do it. I'd never written anything more than a couple thousand words. I literally went on Google, and this is going to sound ridiculous, and Googled how long should a book be? And it said, well, it depends on the book. And then I had to narrow my search, and then it said, well, it should be between 60 and 100,000 words. A safe place to land is 80,000 words. I took my little calculator out and said, okay, if I did 30 chapters, how many words would that be? This is before I even wrote the book. Because I was trying to come at it like that, can I even do this? And then I was like, okay, you know what? If I don't think about and then I got the whole climbing the mountain thing in my head. If you look up at Mount Everest, you go, I can't do it. If you look at, if you ever watch how they climb Everest, they go Camp 1, Camp 2, Camp 3, Camp 4, then they go to the top. And that's the way I approach the book, just one chapter at a time. And so I wasn't sure if there would even be a book when I first started it. What I kept seeing in my head were these great scenes, and then I had to put a story around them. Because I work in TV, I'm very visual in my head, and you'll see that in the second book. There's scenes that when I'm writing them, I could see them being acted out in a movie. I could see it as sure as day. In the first book, I could see her seeing something in the window that wasn't there and being like, that it must have been there, I didn't see it. And then I could see her seeing something more and going, wait a second, this is getting weird now. And I could see those little things happening along the way where she picks up the clues. And the second book's the same way. So, it's exciting that I get to do 3 books on this character. And I told the Hollywood guy, Brian, I said, you know what? And I haven't talked to Pericles about it. I go, but if the second and third book do well, we can always come up with a 4th book. You never know how things go, but I take them one at a time.
Thanks, John. I've got a question for you now.
Yeah.
So we've hosted a lot of authors on this, and a lot of them novelists they kind of break down in between pantsers and plotters. Otherwise, they plot the whole thing out, or they fly by the seat of their pants. And now it seems like you're kind of in between the both. Now that you've got the trilogy, how would you define yourself in terms of your writing?
I am in between. What I end up doing is, if you picture building a house, I know there's going to be a bathroom on the second floor with a tub, and there's going to be a couple bedrooms up there, and there's going to be some kind of staircase because you have to get up there. That's the way I write. I sort of have a general idea, but once I get into it, the real fun is when you start to really go, well, it doesn't have to be that kind of staircase. It could be a really cool staircase that does this. And why don't I'd always have a tub but why don't I put a window, and the window could look out at a pond? You know what I mean? And that's the way I write, where I get a general idea, but I'm always surprised as I'm doing it. It's funny. A character will just literally sometimes show up in your head and tap you on the shoulder and say, and I never know where it's going to come from. I'm talking to you and you're sitting there with bookshelves behind you. Somewhere you're going to be in my head now like that. So I may write a story someday, and some part of my subconscious will go, well, what if she stopped into a bookstore and a guy like this existed? And you go, okay, so now you're thinking, well, this is going to be just some throwaway character that she'll meet, and this and that'll happen. But then you get in there and she meets him, and he has some interesting thing about him, and you go, all of a sudden you're 7 chapters later going, how did that guy with glasses in the bookstore suddenly become one of my main characters in my book? That wasn't supposed to happen. And to me, that's the real fun of writing. If he just really plotted it out completely, I think he would lose some of the magic. So I try to leave enough of it not known before I start, that I get surprised when it does show up, if that makes sense.
I greatly look forward to a book with David, the guy in the bookstore in Vermont, with glasses. I can't wait for that to show up.
Yes.
Or some variation of that. I just got submitted the question, do you plan to write any more picture books?
Probably. I've had people say to me, you got to write another one. I'm like, the way my brain works, it'll get written when the idea comes to me. And I've said this to children before because they can really get the concept. Like when Polly Petals happened, and Shayna may remember this, I wanted to write Manchester Christmas. Both those books came out almost at the same time. But Polly Petals was just this character. I had this little girl in my head with her hands on her hips. And she, this idea of her with this flower. And I didn't know where it came from. I have no clue to this day where Polly came from, but she kept stepping in my way. I'm like, listen, kid, you look cute. I'm sure maybe I'll write a story about you someday, but I want to write the serious adult book about this dream I had. And every time I was like, okay, so forget the little girl with the flower. Let's focus on this. And she popped back in my head. And I remember thinking, this little jerk, if I don't write about her and get it done and go, okay, here's your story. What's your name? I didn't even know her name. Polly came to me later. Here you go, Polly. You're happy now? I wrote your story. And it only took me a week to write it. But once I got her out of the way, then it left me alone and I could focus on the other story. I don't know how anybody could write more than one thing at one time. But so if a story, to answer your question, if an idea really comes to me that I think is really good, then yeah, definitely. I think it will happen. But right now I'm so tied up in these novels that, it just, the other one got done around March, and then it's coming out in the fall. And I had a little break, and now I'm in the research mode with the one set in Italy, and I'll start that in October, and that'll be it until March. Again, because they take me about 5 months to write, because I'm writing part-time. I'm not, if I was doing it full time, they'd go faster, but I kind of like that I have to go slower because it gives me more time to get better ideas. If anybody, or any writer who's really good could probably write a book in a weekend if they had to, but doesn't necessarily mean the book could be great. They probably, if you said, boy, if you give me 3 months, I could have written you a really good book, but here's something.
Thanks, John. We've heard a little bit about your process, but Shayna, I'm interested in your process, both in illustrating John's children's books and in doing the covers for the novels.
I like to read the story first. It helps me connect with, the characters, especially the children's books. And the general, process for me is then to the main characters, sketch them out, and then do, like for the first one, God Needed a Puppy, I had done the cover for John, but the two characters in it, the Edgar and Freddie, the owl and the fox, I developed that initial painting and just asked him if he felt that was what he kind of wanted. And he said, yeah. And then I just kind of ran with it. And then on each page, based on layout of the words, what would be the main image to then, and so I laid out in Excel, I took the words that he felt would be on each page and then gave him the concept of what I would, paint for that image, for that page to tag with it. And then just started going through, giving him the draft, paintings, and then tweaking them to kind of fit. And we were pretty much on the same page on everything. So it was really easy. I mean, just little nuances of things that we tweaked in that first book. So it just seemed like a perfect match with, my style and his stories. And so it was really quite easy. I had never done anything like that before, illustrated any books. So he had faith in me and I had faith in him, and it worked.
Yeah, I would add, Shauna's, I'm going to pop her ego up here. She's so talented that, and I have an open mind with things where I'm like, well, what do you think? And she'd come up with something and I'd love it. It wasn't like, I was saying, well, the fox should be really skinny with a long tail and a weird nose. And I was like, I'm not sure. And then I'm not sure what Freddie looks like. Why don't you show me? And then I'm like, wow, that's perfect. So yeah, Shauna's just got a gift that she reads the story first and then she nails it. Really every time. She really does.
Oh, thank you. It's wonderful working with John, and his stories just touch my heart when I read the first one, and it was just a joy, it just felt like everything was easy in the sense of figuring out the visuals of what would look great on that page with the storyline and what would kids really want to connect with.
Well, and I would add too, they're the flip side. The novels take me 5 months to write, and you have an easier time just doing one cover probably versus having to do it. But the children's books are just the opposite. I've written them usually in about a week. I do 3 or 4 drafts if I like the story, and I'm done. And then Shayna's like 2-3 months doing all these paintings because it's a lot of work with a children's book to do, and they're all their own works of art. There's a picture of Freddie in the first book. I told Shayna, I go, if you blew this up, you could hang it in a museum. I mean, it just the detail in the fur on his face and just everything. I'm like, and you can't, and I'm sure Shayna would agree with this, you can't say, well, I'll make the cover really good and I'll make every other page look really good. But some of the other ones will just be throwaway pages where I don't really do much because the book would suffer, and she doesn't do that. So everything looks great.
Yeah, the kids really, every page is, if they can't read and they're still young, the pictures capture interest. And then as they get older, the words and all of it connect. So it's so important that they go along, the quality of the image matches the story.
Gina asks you, Shayna, do you draw by hand or on the computer?
It just depends on my mood, but I do a lot of pencil sketching and then canvases most of the time. I am exploring a little bit on the digital just because it seems like the publishing world prefers digital. So I've had to expand, but I've been painting since I was about 5. So it's been a learning curve to move into more of the digital, but I prefer hands-on. That's my preferred medium.
Lucy had a question for you both. She said, how did Shayna and John meet each other for John's books?
Oh, John, go ahead. It's a good story. It's a magic.
Yeah. I mean, Shayna was following my Facebook page and I didn't know it. I don't know if you've ever commented on a single thing or clicked like on any photos. A friend of yours had turned you onto the page or something. And when we lost Samuel, the little puppy, I had to tell everybody because people were like seeing we had this dog and he died, at a few months old, which was awful. And I was working on the story. I wrote God Needed a Puppy to help myself because back when I was in like college or high school, especially high school, when you're like nothing but angst, somebody didn't say hello back to you and you're like, it sets you off. I learned a long time ago, good therapy for me is like to just write out what I'm feeling and then you can throw it away. It's like almost like a poison you're getting out of your system sometimes, especially if you're upset. And I wrote God Needed a Puppy really for me. And then when it was done, I looked at it and said, I think I wrote a children's book by accident. And then I got the idea of doing something with it. And I had no idea how to get it published. I had no idea what an illustrator would charge. And I just started poking around that stuff. And it was going to be too expensive to pay somebody a ton of money to do it or make it happen. And I was ready to give up on it. And then in my inbox showed up this picture that Shayna had done, this portrait of Samuel, which is the cover of the book. And I just stared at it like it was like the most bizarre thing, like because I kind of prayed on it almost like I guess this book's not going to happen. And then there's my inbox has a little 1 on it and it's a picture of Samuel. And I'm like, I'm looking at the cover of my book. Where? Who's this person? I kept calling her Shayna and it's Shayna. And then I go, what is this? And you go, and she said, I follow your page. I felt terrible. And I wanted to do this for you as a gift. And I said, I'm trying to do this book. And, do you want, maybe I could just use your one picture, then find something else to fill the pages. And Shayna said, send me the book. And then, we worked out a deal where neither one of us was going to get rich, but the book was going to happen. And it did. And, really, however you ended up on my page, like it was like an angel, her showing up to help. And that's how we became friends, where she just, an act of kindness on her part, where there was nothing in it for her, is what led to all of this. And now Shayna's artwork, and I consider it artwork, not just illustrations or what I think it's art, is now in bookstores all over the place, which is just the coolest thing.
It's a leap of faith on both our parts.
Yeah.
So I've lost pets. I know how hard it is, and I saw his story, and my a cousin had connected me with his page and
Yeah.
thought I would like it because of all the dog stories and the positive nature of John's messages. And so I had been following it, and I saw that he had, posted after the 17th of January when Samuel had passed, and I was just in tears. It wasn't my dog, but I could feel the heartache, and did the portrait and just said, hey, you don't know me, but I'd like to send you this. And he's like, hey, can I use this for a cover on a children's book? I'm like, it's yours, you can use it. He's like, well, I need an illustrator. And I'm like, well, I've never done it. And
Yeah.
he's like, well, hey, what's there to lose, right? And so we just both took that leap that,
Yeah.
of let's try this, So
Yeah.
it worked out great. And
But I
John
never lose. Yeah.
has wonderful, wonderful blessings in my life, and all his fans. Everybody's just so wonderful.
Yeah, we didn't physically meet until book signing when Shayna drove up from, was it Maryland or Virginia? Virginia, right?
Virginia. Mm-hmm.
Virginia to come to Colony Center Mall, and we met there, and it was just crazy how it all came together. So, but really, don't miss the most important part of the whole story is none of this happens if Shayna doesn't just do a nice gesture, where there was nothing in it for her other than being nice, and that's how it all started.
Well, that's what Chase does, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I think we've all done acts of kindness that with nothing expected in return. And John could have just accepted the portrait and not taken a risk with me saying, well, I don't know if she can illustrate my books, but he did the same. Like, he included me in his wonderful path here. I mean, that was an act of kindness too. So, it's that trust that what's meant to be will be, and
Sure.
to just be yourself, right? And look where you can make lift other people up is always a good thing.
Yeah.
And Chase tries to do that in her stories, right? That's where she's helping others.
That's really lovely. John, you mentioned earlier something about Hollywood.
Yes.
Do you have anything that you can tell us in that regard?
Yeah, this isn't for really public consumption yet because I'm still waiting on the lawyers who are not my lawyers. They're important lawyers in Hollywood. But Brian Herzlinger is a director, producer, writer who I'd sent Manchester Christmas to before I had a book deal, and circled back around with him right at the time Pericles said we want to produce this book. He got back to me like within a day or two of them and said, hey, I just finally read your book and I love it. And I think this could be a really good TV movie. So he went round and round he bought the rights to it from me and from Pericles. And then he went round and round with Hallmark and Lifetime and other people. And he had somebody who wanted to privately finance it. And it's been a whole year of this ups and downs. And I think my dogs are going to bark. My wife must be home. Hold on. I can't tell. If you hear a lot of barking, my wife's home, Courtney. But the update is a guy who used to run Hallmark, who made Hallmark Channel, what Hallmark Channel is, left a couple of years ago. He wanted to start his own network called Great American Country. Hold on. I'm trying to bust in on my call here. And first Brian showed it to a couple of actors who do a lot of Hallmark movies, and they both fell in love with it. They wanted to play the characters. Once he had them on board, he then pitched it to he pitched it to everybody. And this one guy read the book, this head of this network actually read Manchester Christmas, which to me was a big deal, that somebody really important would even read it. And he really fell in love with it and said, I want to buy the rights to all of these stories with these characters. So nothing's officially signed yet, although he's given a verbal commitment. So it looks like if everything goes fine, which it should, they'll get the stuff signed the next week or two. And this cable channel called Great American Country, which is in 22 million homes. They're new. They're relatively new. They kind of bought Discovery and they bought a couple different things. They're gonna produce the movie. It will be shot this winter for Manchester Christmas, and then put together, and it would air next Christmas of 2022. And if they're happy with the movie, a month or two later, they would shoot Chasing Manhattan, and that would come out Christmas of 2023. And I haven't written Chasing Rome yet, but if they like the second one, so there could be 3 movies in a row based on Chase and Gavin and these stories, which is really exciting. So it looks like it's definitely going to happen. They just, I mean, the head of the guy who's in charge said he wants to do it, and he wants the lawyer to draw up the contracts and get it done. So, and I'll give away something that no one knows. I don't think, maybe Shayna might know. If you look up an actor named Trevor Donovan, if you Google him, he's going to play Gavin. I don't know that the contract's signed yet. Please don't message him and tell him I told you, because but he's just Mr. Hunkalicious. You know, if you want to picture a good-looking guy, it's Trevor Donovan. So he's one of the people that really wants to do it. He's a big part of this. He also read the book and loved it. So yeah, I'm learning with Hollywood. It's never done till it's done, and there's a bunch of moving parts. But the most important moving parts want this. So I'm just like waiting for the phone call that says we signed the contracts, they've given me the money, and we're shooting in January in this place. I don't know where he's going to shoot it. I'm trying to get him to look at Manchester, but a lot of stuff gets shot up in Canada right now because winter movies, it's cold up there. They have a longer winter. And it's also, the government up there gives them such huge give backs to shoot up there. That's why a lot of TV shows get shot in Canada, because they save a lot of money. So that's hopefully what's going to happen. It's I haven't publicly said it yet because nothing's signed yet, but that's where it's at. It's about 98% there, but I won't believe it until I hear the contracts are signed, if that makes sense.
Well, if you shoot it in Manchester, I know a guy at a bookstore with glasses that
exactly. We'll get you in there. Yeah.
Thanks, John. I've got a question for you. So what?
Yeah.
With your background in journalism, what from that has informed your writing? I mean, what have you learned in journalism that you've been put to work in your novels?
Journalism, you get to the point quickly, and it's tricky when you transition because you want to go too quick. And writing novels is show more than tell, as they say. More show, less tell. Tell is where, Davos walked in and he was angry. That's journalism. Novel writing is Davos came in, put his glasses down, and rubbed his eyes hard, and then opened the fridge, looked, and just closed the door, didn't say anything. Opened a beer, went to the couch, collapsed in the chair, and his wife walked in, he put his hand up as if to say, not now. That's writing a novel where I'm not saying a lot, but you're describing it more, where you're like, oh, this guy must have had a really crappy day. He doesn't even want to eat dinner. He's waving his wife away. Please don't talk to me. So it's trickier. The language is good because you learn a lot of language when you write, no matter what you do. But it is trickier. And when I first started doing it, I had to really, and I have to do it again with this third book. I really have to get my head in the right frame of, you're not writing stories for the news tonight. You're writing a book, and I think. It's funny, people loved the first book, but the second book, for me, writing it took longer, but I put more of that stuff in there. I thought that was a bit more descriptive and a bit more like trying to put you there and make you feel it, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So Michael asked a little while back, and I just caught up to that. I'm sorry, I missed it before. At what point do you think you'll be back to in-person book events? And are you looking forward to that?
We just, there's picture a railroad track with two things. One is the issue of just COVID and being safe, and the other one is, and I'm going to be is Michael. I want to be honest with Michael and say this. Here's the problem, Michael. Like, let's say Rachel said, the numbers are looking better up in Saratoga County. Let's do a book signing, and then I do one, and 20 people show up. And they're all kind of close to each other, even though we said try to social distance. Some people don't have masks on, even though we said maybe put your mask on. And then one person there gets COVID at the supermarket 2 days before the signing. Well, they're going to go to the signing, and then they're going to say, oh, God, I'm sick. Even if it's not bad, they're going to, everybody around us go, I told you not to go to that stupid book signing. You were standing with all those people in the bookstore, and poor Rachel and Northshire are going to get blamed. Why did you even have that event? Now people are sick. So there's some of that where you could get it anywhere, but I know if we put people together in a big group, we're definitely going to get blamed if somebody gets sick. So I don't want to get the bookstores in trouble, and I also don't want anybody to get sick. So I think it's probably going to be the spring. I'm hoping whatever shakes out with all these different mandates and everything else. We've got pretty high vaccination rates around here. So, I'm hoping the Delta variant does what it's going to do and, moves on, and we can maybe by the spring. Because even though it'll be weird, usually when a book comes out, that's when we do all the signings, and Shayna would come up. And this may be one where in the spring, if it's a lot better, we do a signing and we see who shows up, and we still sign a lot of books and meet people. I love meeting the people too. And I hate the thought of meeting them with a mask on or them having a mask on. I can't see their smiling faces. So I want to do it when everybody really feels safe. And there's people like, if you cancel them, they get mad at you, but if you hold them, they get mad at you. So I'd rather wait until we just get a little bit safer. I was really hoping we could do them, honestly, Michael, but I was watching the daily numbers from Albany County, especially, and they just kept going up in late August towards September. And I said, this is just going the wrong direction. And I had 7 of them scheduled, and 3 of the 7 said, we don't want to do it. It's getting too uncomfortable. So I didn't want to do half a launch. I said, I'd rather wait a little bit, and then we'll do a bunch of them. But again, I'm always happy. Like, I'm going to go to Northshire on Monday and sign books. So if anybody gets one from Northshire and says, I really want to say to Peggy, blah, 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 I'll go there and write that. I did that today at a bookstore in Schenectady. I had about 5 or 6 of them that were very specific messages to people, to Susie, hang in there, John Gray, so I'm happy to do all that stuff.
Yes, anyone who ordered a ticket that came with the book for tonight's event, John will be signing and personalizing them for you Monday. And if you didn't, you can order one on our website and use the notes field at checkout to request any personalizations or notes that you want in there. So John and Shayna, John, we have a sense of what's next for you. Shayna, are you working on any other picture books? Do you only illustrate John's work, or do you have other things that you're working on right now?
I've only illustrated John's books. I do commissions for people with, pet portraits and things like that, but just keep things open. And when John has things, I'm always glad to collaborate with him. So.
Well, Shauna's being a little modest in that the pet portraits, if she wanted to, if you wanted to make that a business, I think you could do that full time. But the question is, do you want to paint? Do you want to just do pet portraits all day for 50 hours a week? Which, I'm not a painter. I'm not an artist, but I'd wonder if they're about the 74th dog or cat, you'd go, well, I need something more interesting. They're certainly interesting with people buying them, but you know what I mean.
I love doing pets. There's just something very special about animals, and everyone is unique. Every one of them is unique. So I feel like it's very important to portray someone's pet, which is always a loved family member, and to really capture that essence of what they look like. So it's almost like a challenge every time to get it just right. So I do enjoy that.
And I'll give Shayna a plug. She knows about 6. I said the name. Back, was it like last year? Dana Perino on Fox News held up Keller's heart during the show because she heard about the book and our launch, and she showed the big line of people, and we were both really touched that she did that. And Shayna said, I want to do a portrait of. She has this dog Jasper who just passed away, and Shayna did went through a bunch of pictures of Jasper and found one we didn't even speak. We had never talked to Dana in our lives, and Shayna did a portrait of him. And I forget, did you send it to me and I sent it down?
Yeah.
And I sent it down with a note to Fox News, and she got a hold of me and she was blown away by it. And it hangs in her home on a beach in New Jersey. She's got a house right on the beach. And she said, we look at it every day before we go upstairs to bed, her and her husband. And now she just lost that dog, Jasper. And I just know that it means so much to her now. It's one thing to have a great portrait of your dog when your dog's with you, but when you do lose them, and it really warms your heart to look at something. And your stuff is so accurate and real that some people have said to me with the pictures in the book, like they look like pictures, not even paintings. I go, that's because she's that accurate. So so my point earlier, though, you can retire just doing portraits if you want to, but
it brings me joy to, because I know everyone cherishes their pets so much, and
yeah,
it's a special gift that I can give to others. So Thank you.
So we are just about out of time, but I wanted to wrap up with one last question for both of you. I know that both of your work has given a lot of people a great deal of comfort in hard times. And this last year and a half, almost 2 years, has been a very hard time for a lot of people. And I wondered if there are any pieces of art, either writing or visual art, that have comforted the two of you through these tough times.
Go ahead, Sean.
Well, John's books. I mean, I really enjoyed those books. It's, uplifting things in hard times, or get your mind off things that you can't change necessarily. And just emails from people about my art have lifted my spirits too. So it's always in the kindness of his fans. I've had some of them I've only met at book signings, and they've been there for me. And I lost my mother, and they've just been, in touch with me. And it's just amazing, the connection with people through the books and the art. Aw.
Yeah. Well, my dogs have kept me pretty busy through all the pandemic. We had a dog, Bella, come to us a little over a year ago, right before the pandemic started, and she's kind of kept us busy. In terms of art, believe it or not, this won't seem like art, but like last summer, I was doing a ton of walking because it was before the gyms were open. And I was like, I can't listen to music every single day. And I started watching these, not podcasts, but they were the American television historical. They go back and they talk to people who were part of a show. Like if you love the Mary Tyler Moore Show or MASH or you name the show, they have these interviews with not just the stars, but people behind the scenes, and hear all these great stories. And I must have watched 100 hours of that stuff, where I was learning all kinds of interesting things about the actors and the shows, and what really happened when Chrissy left Three's Company. Some of that stuff was silly. It was, but I enjoyed that a lot. And I also, believe it or not, I wanted to try script writing, even though it's different than journalism and writing books. And I spent a couple months researching it and reading everything I could, and then I tried to write a script and hooked up with a guy who teaches script writing, and he ripped my script to shreds, and which was fine. It was probably terrible, but I've been doing some of that. In fact, I just wrote a script for a Christmas movie, which I sent to the Hollywood director, he's shooting a movie right now, so it's waiting for him when he gets home. He said he would read it, so I try to keep my mind occupied that way with the next project. But that was one of those things I talked earlier. I had an idea for a good movie, but it wasn't really a book. I said, this is better as a script. And the one that got ripped to shreds, that helped me because I knew what not to do. So I just wrote that in August. It took me 19 days to write it from start to finish. And I had it printed up and bound so it looked like a real script, and I mailed it to the Hollywood director. He's not even home now in Los Angeles. It's waiting in his inbox. When he gets home, his wife will give it to him. But things like that to keep myself occupied. And again, I love the interacting with people on Facebook. Courtney and I run the page. She helps me with it, but it's really us you're talking to if you message me or if you're mad at me, and we'll talk back and forth. But it's just social media can be really bad, but it can also be really good in some ways, and I think it helped a lot of us stay connected through this pandemic.
Well, John, Shayna, thank you both so much. This has been a lovely evening, a lovely event, and you can order Chasing Manhattan at Northshire.com. The links, we put that in the chat a few times. And have a great weekend, and thanks for your time, everyone.
Well, I'd be remiss if I didn't say one more thing. Growing up, going over to Manchester as a kid, I don't know how old that store is in Manchester, but it seems like it was there when I was about 8. It's been there like 40 years.
Yeah, 46 years, I think.
Yeah.
Yes,
So my late teens, early 20s, I went over there a lot, and I would walk through that store. It's a great store. If you've never been to the one, both stores are great. Saratoga's great too. But there's all little nooks and crannies in Manchester store. You know what I'm talking about. And I never imagined in my wildest dreams a book of mine would be selling there, which to me, it's a really big thrill. It really, really is. So thank you so much for carrying the books, and it means a lot to me. It really does.
Thank you so much, John. And thank you so much, Shayna, for joining us tonight. It's been a real pleasure. And everyone, have a great evening.
Bye.
Thank you.
Night.
Bye.